Have you ever begged for help while bleeding on your parents' porch, only to hear them whisper on the other side of the door that night, "I learned my family wasn't here to protect me. They were here to break me, and they had no idea I'd fight back." The blood dripping from my split lip onto their welcome mat should have been enough. The way my shoulder hung at an unnatural angle should have moved them, but all I heard through that oak door was my mother's voice. She brought this on herself. That's when I understood. This wasn't about money anymore. This wasn't even about the mortgage papers my sister wanted me to sign. This was about power, control, and a family that had spent 36 years teaching me I was expendable. They were wrong. My name is Rachel Monroe, and I should have known something was wrong the moment my sister called. Vanessa never invited me anywhere without an agenda. At 36, I'd learned to read the subtle manipulations in her voice, the way she'd start conversations with compliments before sliding into requests. But this time felt different, warmer, almost genuine. "I want you to see the new place," she'd said, her voice bright through the phone. "Ethan's been working so hard on it. We're having a little dinner party Saturday night. Just family, just us." The house sat in Shaker Heights, one of those renovated colonials that screamed new money. Fresh white paint gleamed under the porch lights and through the windows. I could see furniture arranged with the precision of a magazine spread. Everything looked perfect, too perfect. I pulled into their driveway at 7:30, clutching a bottle of wine I couldn't really afford. My job as a financial manager at Clearwater Consulting paid well enough, but not Shaker Heights well. Not like whatever Ethan was doing in commercial real estate. Vanessa answered the door in a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. She hugged me, actually hugged me, and for a moment, I let myself believe this might be real. "You look amazing," she said, steering me inside. "Come see what we've done with the kitchen." The smell hit me immediately. Fresh paint, new carpet, that chemical scent of recent renovation, but underneath it, something else, something staged, like walking into a model home where everything was placed for show, not for living. Ethan emerged from what I assumed was his study, a folder tucked under his arm. He was handsome in that clean-cut way that made people trust him with their money-sharp jawline, expensive haircut, smile that never quite reached his eyes. Rachel. He embraced me like we were old friends instead of reluctant in-laws. Perfect timing. I was just reviewing some paperwork. The folder landed on the kitchen island with a soft thud. Business on a Saturday night." I kept my tone light, but my instincts were already firing warnings. "Not business," Vanessa said, pouring wine from a bottle that definitely wasn't from the grocery store. "Family business." We made small talk through dinner, their renovation timeline, my work, safe topics that felt rehearsed, but I kept catching glances between them, silent communications I couldn't decode. Ethan's hand would brush the folder. Vanessa would nod almost imperceptibly. Finally, as I pushed around the last of my overpriced salmon, Ethan cleared his throat. "So, Rachel, we wanted to talk to you about something." There it was, the agenda. He slid the folder across the table. "We're refinancing the house, taking advantage of the market while it's good, but the lender wants additional collateral." I opened the folder, my financial training kicking in automatically. Mortgage documents, refinancing papers, and there highlighted in yellow a cosigner line. My name was already typed in. "You want me to cosign your mortgage?" I kept my voice neutral, professional. Inside, alarm bells were screaming. "It's just a formality," Vanessa said quickly. "You know how banks are these days. They want to see multiple income sources, especially with interest rates adjusting." Adjusting. I flipped through the documents, scanning the terms. Variable rate, starting at 4.2%, but with adjustment clauses that could push it above 12. Balloon payments, prepayment penalties. This wasn't just risky, it was predatory. "This is a lot of money," I said carefully. "And these terms are completely standard," Ethan interrupted. "I've been in real estate for 15 years. Rachel, I know what I'm doing. But I knew what I was reading. $750,000. If they defaulted, I'd be liable for the full amount. My salary, my savings, my entire financial future would be on the line for a house I'd never live in. I need time to think about this. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Think about what Vanessa's voice had lost its warmth. We're family. This is what family does for each other. Family helps family make smart decisions, I said, closing the folder. And this, I'm not sure this is smart. Ethan's smile finally disappeared completely. Not smart. I'm offering you the chance to help your sister secure her future, and you're questioning my judgment. I'm questioning the terms of this loan. The adjustable rate alone could... Could what? His voice was getting louder. Could make us rich when property values keep climbing, could set us up for life. Or could destroy us if the market turns. Vanessa reached across the table, her hand covering mine, but her grip was too tight, her nails pressing into my skin. Rachel, sweetie, sometimes you have to take risks. Sometimes you have to trust family. I looked around the perfect kitchen, the staged living room visible through the archway, the expensive wine, the designer clothes. How much of this was real? How much was borrowed money, leveraged dreams, a house of cards waiting for someone like me to shore up the foundation? I'll review everything at home, I said, standing. Give me a week. The silence stretched between us like a wire about to snap. Of course, Vanessa said finally, but her smile looked painted on. Take all the time you need. As I walked to my car, I could feel them watching from the window. The folder sat heavy in my hands, and I knew with absolute certainty that I'd just crossed a line I couldn't uncross. I'd seen their real faces now, and they'd seen mine. The call came Tuesday morning while I was reviewing quarterly reports at my desk. Family dinner Sunday? My mother's voice cut through the phone like a blade. No greeting, no pleasantries, just the command. Your father's making his pot roast. Linda Monroe had perfected the art of making invitations sound like summons. At 62, she wielded guilt like a surgeon's scalpel, precise, effective, leaving invisible scars. I'll try to make it. Mom, work's been... 6 o'clock. Don't be late. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, knowing exactly what Sunday would bring. Vanessa had called in reinforcements. Sunday arrived gray and cold, typical Cleveland October weather that matched my mood. I pulled into my parents' driveway at 5:58, punctual as always. Through the dining room window, I could see them already seated around the table, Vanessa, Ethan, Mom, and Dad, waiting. The house smelled like my childhood pot roast, anxiety, and the faint cigarette smoke my father thought he'd successfully hidden for 20 years. Nothing had changed since I'd moved out. Same beige walls, same family photos that stopped including me somewhere around my college graduation, same uncomfortable silence that followed me like a shadow. There she is. Gerald Monroe stood to embrace me, his hug lasting exactly 3 seconds long enough to seem affectionate, brief enough to avoid actual intimacy. My father had perfected emotional distance the way other men perfected golf swings. I took my usual seat, the one that put my back to the kitchen, facing the firing squad. You look tired, honey, Mom said, passing the potatoes without meeting my eyes. Are you taking care of yourself? Translation: You look like you're making poor life choices. I'm fine, Mom, just busy with work. Must be nice, Ethan said, cutting his meat with surgical precision. Having such a flexible schedule. Not everyone has that luxury. I felt the first prick of irritation. Flexible. Well, you don't have a family to worry about. No mortgage, no real responsibilities. Must make decision-making pretty simple. Vanessa shot him a look that said slow down, but he ignored it. Some decisions are simple, I said carefully. Others require more consideration. Like what kind of considerations? Dad asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. The folder. Of course they knew about the folder. Gerald, Mom warned, but her heart wasn't in it. No, Linda, let's talk about this. Dad set down his fork. Vanessa told us about the opportunity she offered Rachel, help with the house. Opportunity? They were calling it an opportunity. I'm still reviewing the terms. Well, what terms? Ethan's voice sharpened. It's family helping family. What's to review? $750,000 is what's to review. The words came out harder than I'd intended. That's not pocket change. That's my entire financial future. Your financial future? Vanessa laughed, but it sounded forced. Rachel, you make good money. You have savings. You live in that tiny apartment. Drive that old car. What are you saving for? Security, independence, the things you apparently take for granted. We don't take anything for granted, Ethan said. We take risks. We invest in our future. We don't hoard money like... Like what? The silence stretched taut. Mom focused intently on her green beans. Dad reached for his beer. Like someone who's afraid to live, Vanessa finished quietly. The words hit like a physical blow. Afraid to live, because I wouldn't bankrupt myself for their real estate gamble. I'm not afraid to live, I said. I'm afraid to lose everything I've worked for. Everything you've worked for? Ethan leaned back in his chair. Rachel, you're 36 years old. You live alone. No husband, no kids, no family of your own. What exactly are you protecting? The cruelty was breathtaking. Mom and Dad said nothing. Just sat there while my brother-in-law dissected my life like a failed experiment. Ethan, Vanessa's voice carried a warning, but she was smiling. Actually smiling. I'm just saying, he continued, emboldened by the lack of defense from my parents. Some people build lives, others just exist. Rachel's got nothing to lose and everything to gain by helping family. That's enough, I said, standing. Is it? Dad's voice stopped me. Because it sounds like Ethan's making sense. You've always been selfish. Rachel, even as a kid, remember when Vanessa wanted to borrow your bike for the talent show and you said no? I was 8. Vanessa was 12. She'd wanted my new birthday bike for a week, not an hour. But apparently, even childhood boundaries counted as selfishness in the Monroe family mythology. That was 30 years ago, Dad. Patterns don't change, Mom said softly. You've always put yourself first. The words hung in the air like smoke. 36 years of subtle accusations, of being positioned as the family problem, of having my reasonable boundaries reframed as character flaws. I could see it all clearly now, the way they'd groomed me to be the one who gave in, who sacrificed, who carried everyone else's burdens. So this is how it's going to be. I looked around the table. You're all going to gang up on me because I won't co-sign a predatory loan. Predatory. Ethan's voice went dangerously quiet. Did you just call my business practices predatory? I called the loan terms predatory because they are. He stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. You know what's predatory, letting your sister struggle while you sit on a pile of money. Watching family fail because you're too afraid to take a chance. Sit down, Ethan, Vanessa said, but there was no force behind it. No, let him finish, I said. I want to hear exactly what you all think of me. You want honesty. Ethan stepped closer. You're a bitter, lonely woman who can't stand to see other people succeed. You'd rather watch your own sister lose her house than risk your precious savings account. That's not... It is exactly that. You know what normal families do. They help each other. They don't interrogate every detail. They don't demand weeks to review terms. They sign the papers because it's family. I looked at my parents, waiting for them to intervene, to tell Ethan he'd gone too far. But Dad was nodding slowly, and Mom was staring at her plate. Well, I asked them directly, is that what you think too? We think, Mom said carefully, that family comes first, always. Even when family is asking me to risk everything. Especially then, Dad said. That's what love looks like. Rachel.
Sacrifice.
I grabbed my purse, my hands shaking with rage and something deeper, a kind of grief I didn't want to name. "Thanks for dinner," I said, "and thanks for showing me exactly where I stand." I was halfway to the door when Vanessa called after me.
"Rachel, wait! Don't leave angry!"
I turned back. For a moment. Just a moment. I thought I saw something like regret in her eyes.
"I'm not angry," I said.
"I'm awake." In my car, I sat in the driveway for a full 5 minutes, engine running, heat blasting against the October chill. Through the dining room window, I could see them talking, probably dissecting every word I'd said, reinforcing their narrative of Rachel the selfish, Rachel the problem, Rachel who needed to be managed and manipulated into compliance.
My phone buzzed.
A text from my best friend Mara. "How was family dinner survived the Monroe Gauntlet yet?" I typed back, "They don't see me as family. They see me as financial insurance." Her response came immediately. "Then maybe it's time to stop paying premiums." As I drove home through the darkening streets, I realized Mara was right. I'd been paying premiums my whole life in guilt, in diminished expectations, in the slow erosion of my own boundaries. And for what? A family that saw my caution as selfishness, my independence as isolation, my self-preservation as betrayal. The war had been declared at that dinner table. I just hadn't realized I'd been fighting it alone for 36 years. The text came Thursday afternoon while I was in the middle of a client presentation. "Can we talk just us? Tonight at 8. I want to clear the air. V." I stared at the message, my laptop screen frozen on quarterly projections while my mind raced. Vanessa never apologized, never backed down, but maybe Sunday's dinner had been too much, even for her. I texted back, "Your place." "Yes, Ethan has a work thing. It'll just be us sisters." Sisters. When was the last time she'd called us that? I arrived at 8:15, deliberately late. The house looked different at night, less staged, more lived in. Only the porch light was on, casting long shadows across the perfectly manicured lawn. Vanessa's car sat in the driveway, but I didn't see Ethan's BMW. Good. Maybe we could actually talk without his poison infecting every word. I knocked, waited. Footsteps approached, but when the door opened, it wasn't Vanessa. "Rachel!" Ethan stood in the doorway, still in his work clothes but with his tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. "Come in." My stomach dropped. "Where's Vanessa?"
"Running an errand. She'll be back soon."
He stepped aside, gesturing me in.
"We should talk while we wait."
Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but I'd driven 20 minutes through Cleveland traffic, and maybe this was an opportunity to set boundaries directly with him, make it clear that his behavior Sunday was unacceptable. "Fine," I said, stepping inside, "but make it quick." He led me to the living room, the same space where we'd had dinner, but it felt different now, smaller. The carefully arranged furniture suddenly seemed like barriers, trapping me in the center of the room. "Drink," he asked, moving toward the kitchen. "No, I want to know why you really asked me here." He stopped, turned. In the dim lighting, his face looked different, harder. The charming mask had slipped. "Straight to business. I respect that." He moved closer, and I caught the smell of alcohol on his breath. "Here's the thing, Rachel. You embarrassed me Sunday." "I embarrassed you?" Calling my loan terms predatory, questioning my expertise in front of my wife's family. His voice was calm, conversational, but there was something cold underneath. "That can't happen again." "Then don't put me in a position where I have to question." "You're going to sign those papers." He moved another step closer. "Tonight. I have them right here." "No, I'm not." "Yes, you are." The pleasantness was gone now, replaced by something ugly. "Because if you don't, I'm going to make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are." "What are you talking about?" "Your little drinking problem, for instance." I stared at him. "What drinking problem?" "The one Vanessa's been covering for, the way you show up to family events smelling like alcohol. The way you slur your words sometimes. Very sad, really. Successful career woman, but can't handle the pressure. Can't handle being alone. That's not I don't have a drinking problem. Of course you don't. But who's going to believe that when it comes from your concerned family? When there are photos of you stumbling out of bars downtown, when your own sister confirms she's been worried about you for months. The room seemed to tilt. You're threatening to lie about me. I'm threatening to tell a story. Your version. My version, who's to say which one's true. But I can promise you, mine will be more convincing. Vanessa will do whatever I tell her to do. Just like you're going to sign those papers. I turned toward the door, but he moved faster, positioning himself between me and the exit. We're not done talking. Yes, we are. I tried to step around him, but he grabbed my wrist. Don't walk away from me. His grip was tight enough to bruise. I could feel his fingers digging into my skin, cutting off circulation. Let go of me. Sign the papers, Rachel. Let go. Instead, he twisted my wrist, sending a shock of pain up my arm. I gasped, tried to pull away, but his other hand shot out and grabbed my shoulder. You think you're so smart, he hissed, his face inches from mine. Think you're better than us with your careful little life, your rules, your boundaries. But you're nothing. Just a bitter, dried-up woman with no one who gives a damn about her. Stop! You're going to sign because you have nothing else. No husband, no kids, no real family. We're all you have, and if we cut you off, what's left? I drove my knee upward, catching him in the stomach. He doubled over, releasing my wrist, and I bolted for the door. But he recovered faster than I'd expected. His hand caught my hair, yanking me backward. I stumbled, fell against the coffee table, pain exploding through my ribs. You bitch, he snarled, standing over me. You want to do this the hard way? I scrambled to my feet, but he was already moving. His fist caught my cheek, snapping my head to the side. Stars exploded across my vision. I tasted blood. Stop! I gasped, but he hit me again, this time in the stomach. I doubled over, couldn't breathe, couldn't think through the pain. Sign the fucking papers. No. This time he grabbed my shoulders and slammed me against the wall. My head cracked against the plaster, and everything went fuzzy for a moment. When my vision cleared, he was holding me there, his face twisted with rage. You think anyone's going to believe you over me, over Vanessa? You're delusional. I heard the front door open. Footsteps. Vanessa's voice calling out, Ethan, Rachel! How's it going in there? For a split second, hope flared in my chest. She'd see what he was doing. She'd stop this. But when she appeared in the doorway, her face didn't register shock or horror, just a kind of tired resignation. Oh, she said quietly. I was hoping we could avoid this. Vanessa, I gasped, blood running from my split lip. Help me! She looked at Ethan, then back at me. When she spoke, her voice was soft, almost apologetic. I just need you to sign. Rachel, that's all. Just sign the papers and this all goes away. The betrayal hit harder than Ethan's fists. My own sister, standing there watching while her husband beat me, asking me to sign away my future like it was a minor inconvenience. Please, I whispered. Sign the papers, she said again. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the truth. This wasn't about money. This was about power, about showing me my place in their hierarchy, about breaking me down until I became what they needed me to be: compliant, grateful, useful. No, I said. Ethan's grip tightened. Wrong answer. He pulled me away from the wall and threw me toward the couch. I hit the arm wrong, felt something pop in my shoulder. The pain was immediate and nauseating. That's enough, Vanessa said, but she didn't move to stop him. It's enough when she signs. I pulled myself up using the couch, my left arm hanging useless. Everything hurt. My face felt like it was on fire, and I could taste blood where my teeth had cut my lip. I'm leaving, I said, No, Ethan said. You're not. But I was already moving, stumbling toward the door. He caught up to me in the hallway, grabbed my good arm, spun me around. We're not finished. I looked him in the eye. This man who'd just beaten me in front of my sister and said the only thing I could think of, yes, we are. I yanked my arm free and ran for the door. This time, neither of them tried to stop me. Outside, the cold air hit my face like a slap. I fumbled for my car keys with shaking hands, my injured shoulder screaming with every movement. Behind me, I could hear them talking through the open door, but I couldn't make out the words. I didn't want to. I managed to get the car started and pulled out of the driveway, my vision blurring from pain and shock. In the rearview mirror, I could see them standing on the porch, watching me go. My sister and her husband, my family. The people who were supposed to love me? I drove through the dark streets of Cleveland, blood on my shirt, my shoulder dislocated, and only one thought echoing in my mind: I had nowhere to go. Except home, to the people who raised me, to the ones who were supposed to protect me no matter what. I turned toward my parents' house, hope and desperation warring in my chest. They would help. They had to help. They were my family. The drive to my parents' house passed in a haze of pain and adrenaline. Every bump in the road sent fire through my dislocated shoulder, and I could feel my left cheek swelling where Ethan's fist had connected. Blood from my split lip had dried sticky on my chin. I pulled into their driveway at 10:47, the headlights sweeping across the familiar front yard with its carefully maintained flower beds and the oak tree I'd climbed as a child. The porch light was on, it always was, and I could see the blue glow of the television through the living room window. They were home. They were awake. I sat in the car for a moment, trying to find the strength to move. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn off the engine. When I finally managed to get out, I nearly fell. My legs felt like water, and the world kept tilting sideways. The walk to the front door felt like miles. Each step sent jolts of agony through my shoulder, and I had to stop twice to keep from vomiting. By the time I reached the porch, I was gasping. I knocked, waited, knocked again, harder. "Mom!" My voice came out as a croak. "Dad, it's Rachel." Silence. I pressed my ear to the door. The television was definitely on. I could hear the familiar sounds of the late-night news. And underneath that, voices, talking quietly. "Please," I called out, louder this time. "I need help. I'm hurt." More silence. Then, so faint I almost missed it, the sound of footsteps moving away from the door. I knocked again, using my good hand to pound against the solid wood. "Mom, I know you're in there. Please, I'm bleeding. I need—" "Shh," my mother's voice, barely audible through the door, not talking to me, talking to someone else. My father's voice, equally quiet. "Just wait, she'll go away." The words hit me like a physical blow. I staggered backward, nearly falling off the porch. "Mom," I tried again, my voice breaking. "It's me. It's Rachel. Please open the door." This time I heard them clearly. "She brought this on herself," my mother said, "getting involved in things that aren't her business." "Vanessa called," my father replied. "Said Rachel attacked Ethan, got violent when they tried to talk sense into her." "I didn't—" I started to shout, then stopped. They couldn't hear me, or they were choosing not to. I pressed my face against the door, my good hand flat against the wood. "Please, I'm your daughter. Please, just open the door." "She'll go to the hospital if it's really that bad," Mom said. "We can't be seen taking sides." Taking sides? As if there were sides to take when your daughter showed up beaten and bleeding on your doorstep. I slumped against the doorframe, the fight going out of me. The cold October air cut through my torn shirt, and I could feel my strength ebbing. My shoulder was on fire, my face felt like hamburger, and the taste of blood in my mouth was making me nauseous. "I'm hurt. I whispered to the door. "I'm really hurt." But the television kept playing, and the voices inside had stopped. They were waiting for me to give up and leave so they could pretend this never happened. I don't know how long I sat there on their porch, 15 minutes, half an hour. Time seemed elastic, stretching and contracting with waves of pain. The welcome mat under me said, "Home Sweet Home," in cheerful yellow letters, and I found myself fixated on those words. Home, sweet, home. This wasn't my home. Maybe it never had been. When the porch light across the street came on, I knew I had to move. Mrs. Patterson in her bathrobe, peering out her window at the crazy woman bleeding on the Monroe family porch. I couldn't let the neighbors see me like this. Couldn't give them something to gossip about at the next block party. I pushed myself up with my good arm, the world spinning violently. My legs almost gave out, but I managed to stagger down the porch steps toward my car. That's when Mrs. Patterson's front door opened. "Rachel, honey, is that you?" I froze. Eleanor Patterson had lived across the street for 30 years. She'd bandaged my scraped knees, given me cookies when I was selling Girl Scout badges, waved at me every Christmas when I came home for dinner. "I'm fine," I called out, trying to keep my face turned away. "Just leaving." "You don't look fine." Her voice was getting closer. "Oh my God, what happened to your face?" I heard her sharp intake of breath as she saw the damage in the streetlight. "Rachel, you need an ambulance. You need—" "No." I fumbled for my car door. "I'm okay. I just need to—" "You're not okay. You look like someone beat the hell out of you." The kindness in her voice nearly broke me. After an hour of being treated like a problem to be managed, basic human compassion felt overwhelming. "Please," I whispered, "don't call my parents. Don't tell them you saw me." She was quiet for a moment, and I could feel her putting the pieces together. The Monroe's daughter, beaten and bleeding, begging for help on their porch while they pretended not to hear. "I'm calling 911, she said firmly. "You can't drive like this." "Mrs. Patterson." "Eleanor, and you're not arguing with me on this one." She was already pulling her phone out of her bathrobe pocket. "Yes, I need an ambulance at 42 Maple Street. I have a young woman here who's been assaulted. She's conscious but badly injured." The next few minutes blurred together. Sirens in the distance, growing closer. Mrs. Patterson's warm hand on my good shoulder, guiding me to sit on her porch steps. The EMTs with their gentle questions and efficient movements, loading me onto a stretcher despite my protests that I could walk. As the ambulance pulled away from Maple Street, I caught a glimpse of my parents' house through the rear window. The porch light was still on, the television still glowing through the living room window. They'd probably watched the whole thing from behind their curtains, watched their neighbor call for help while they sat in their living room, choosing to believe I deserved what happened to me. The EMT working on my shoulder was young, maybe late 20s, with kind eyes and gentle hands. "This is definitely dislocated," he said, adjusting the IV in my good arm. "Looks like someone really worked you over. Do you want to tell me what happened?" I closed my eyes, feeling the pain medication starting to work its way through my system. "Family dinner," I said. He glanced at his partner, then back at me. "Some family?" "Yeah," I whispered, watching the familiar streets of my childhood flash past the ambulance windows. "Some family." At the hospital, they would ask more questions, fill out forms, take photos of my injuries, start a paper trail that would follow me for the rest of my life. But right now, lying on a stretcher in the back of an ambulance, I felt something I hadn't expected relief. I was hurt, alone, and probably about to face the fight of my life. But for the first time in 36 years, I wasn't pretending everything was fine. The Monroe family had finally shown me exactly who they were. And I was going to remember. I spent 3 days in the hospital, 3 days of police interviews, medical exams, and pain medication that made everything feel like it was happening underwater. 3 days during which not one member of my family called, texted, or visited. But Vanessa was busy. I found out on Friday morning when Mara burst into my hospital room, her face flushed with anger and her phone clutched in her hand. "Have you seen this?" she demanded, holding up her screen. It was a Facebook video. Vanessa, sitting in what looked like her perfectly appointed living room, tears streaming down her face as she spoke directly to the camera. "I'm asking for your prayers today for my sister Rachel," she began, her voice trembling with what sounded like genuine emotion. She's been struggling with some personal issues lately, and last night things got really bad. I watched in horror as my sister painted a picture of me as unstable, violent, and dangerous. According to her version of events, I'd shown up at her house clearly intoxicated and acting erratically. When they'd tried to help me, I'd lashed out and hurt myself during what she called a complete mental breakdown. "Ethan and I are just heartbroken," she continued, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "We love Rachel so much, but we're scared. We're scared for her safety and, frankly, for ours too. Please keep her in your prayers as she gets the help she needs." The video had been posted at 2:37 in the morning, just hours after the ambulance had taken me away. It already had over 200 likes and dozens of comments expressing sympathy for poor Vanessa and her troubled sister. "That lying bitch," Mara said, her voice shaking with rage. "She's actually spinning this, making you look like the crazy one." I handed the phone back, my head spinning. The audacity of it was breathtaking. Not only had they refused to help me, they were actively destroying my reputation to cover their tracks. "There's more," Mara said grimly. "Check your work email." She helped me log into my laptop with my good arm. My inbox was flooded with messages. Concerned colleagues forwarding Vanessa's video, HR wanting to schedule a wellness check meeting, my supervisor asking if I needed to take extended leave for personal issues. The carefully crafted narrative was already spreading through my professional network like a virus. Rachel Monroe, the unstable financial manager who'd had a psychotic break and attacked her own family. "They're destroying me," I whispered. "We're going to fight this," Mara said fiercely. "We're going to expose them for what they really are." But even as she said it, I could see the doubt in her eyes. Vanessa's video was polished, convincing, heartbreaking. My version that my own family had beaten me and left me bleeding on their doorstep sounded insane even to me. Who would believe that a successful real estate agent and his devoted wife would brutally assault a family member over a mortgage signature? Who would believe that parents would refuse to help their injured daughter? The answer came in my text messages. "From my cousin Sarah, saw Vanessa's post. So sorry you're going through this. Let me know if you need anything. From my college roommate, thinking of you. Addiction is a disease, don't be ashamed to get help. From my neighbor, hope you're okay. Vanessa's video was really scary to watch." Addiction, mental illness, scary behavior. Vanessa had painted me as the villain of my own assault, and people were buying it. I scrolled through the comments on her video, each one a knife twist in my already broken ribs. "Your poor family. Some people just refuse help until they hit rock bottom. She's lucky to have a sister like you. Not everyone would be so patient with an addict. Praying for healing. Mental illness is so hard on families. This is why I don't enable my alcoholic brother anymore. Tough love is the only way." The word alcoholic appeared dozens of times. Vanessa had never explicitly said I had a drinking problem, but she'd implied it heavily enough that her followers filled in the blanks themselves. "Look at this," Mara said, showing me her phone again. "Someone recorded your arrest video." "My what?" She played a shaky cell phone video that someone had taken from across the street. It showed me stumbling on Mrs. Patterson's porch, my face bloody, my movements unsteady from pain and shock. In the poor lighting and without context, I looked exactly like what Vanessa wanted people to see: a drunk, unstable woman who'd brought violence into a peaceful neighborhood. "The person who posted this is calling it proof of the breakdown," Mara said. "It's already been shared 40 times. I closed my eyes, feeling the walls closing in. They hadn't just beaten me. They'd orchestrated a character assassination so thorough, so convincing, that even I was starting to question my own memory of events.
What if they're right?
I said quietly.
What if I am the problem? What if I've been difficult my whole life and I just never saw it?
Rachel, Mara grabbed my good hand. Look at me. You have a dislocated shoulder, 2 cracked ribs, and a concussion. You didn't do that to yourself. But what if—
No. Stop. I've known you for 15 years. You're the most level-headed person I know. You don't drink more than a glass of wine with dinner. You've never been violent. You've never been unstable.
She pulled up something else on her phone.
And look at this.
It was a group text from what appeared to be my extended family. Cousins, aunts, uncles, people I saw once a year at Christmas, if that. Did everyone see Vanessa's video so heartbreaking? I always thought Rachel was a little off. Remember at Tom's wedding? She was always jealous of Vanessa. Some people can't handle other people's success.
Linda and Gerald must be devastated, having a daughter like that. At least she doesn't have kids. Imagine if she'd reproduced.
The cruelty was casual, matter of fact. 36 years of my life reduced to a series of out-of-context moments, reframed through the lens of Vanessa's lies. Turn it off, I said. Rachel, turn it off, please. Mara closed the phone and sat beside me on the hospital bed. For a long moment, we didn't speak. They're going to get away with it, I said finally.
Not if we fight back.
How do you fight a story this perfect Vanessa comes across as the long-suffering sister trying to help her troubled sibling? I come across as a violent drunk who attacked her own family. Which version do you think people want to believe?
The truth.
The truth doesn't matter anymore. Perception is reality, and they've controlled the narrative from the beginning. I thought about my parents, sitting in their living room while I bled on their porch. How easy it would be for them to confirm Vanessa's story. She did seem unstable that night. She was acting strangely. We were afraid for our safety. I thought about my coworkers, already whispering about my personal issues, my professional reputation, built over 15 years of careful, competent work, crumbling in real time. I thought about Ethan, probably laughing about how perfectly their plan had worked. Not only had they avoided consequences for assaulting me, they'd made me the villain of the story. I have to disappear, I said. What? Quit my job, move away, start over somewhere else where nobody knows about this.
Like hell.
Mara's voice was steel.
That's exactly what they want. They want you to run away, to disappear, to let their lies become the official truth.
Then what do you suggest? She was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she pulled out her phone again. Document everything, she said. Your medical records, the police report, the timeline of events. Build a case. For what?
For when you're ready to fight back.
I looked at her, my best friend, my only ally in this nightmare, and felt a spark of something I'd thought was dead.
Hope. You really think we can beat them?
I think, Mara said carefully, that people who are this good at destroying others have probably done it before, and people who've done it before make mistakes, leave evidence, piss off the wrong people. She started typing on her laptop. Time to do some research on your brother-in-law and your sister. Let's see what skeletons they're hiding in that perfect closet of theirs. As I watched her work, I felt something shifting inside me. The victim mentality that had defined my relationship with my family for 36 years was cracking, revealing something harder underneath. They'd made a mistake. They'd assumed I was weak, that I'd take their abuse and disappear quietly. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Mara, I said.
Yeah.
When you said document everything, how far back should I go? She looked up from her laptop, a slow smile spreading across her face. How far back do you want to go? I thought about a lifetime of subtle manipulations, gaslighting, and emotional abuse, about being positioned as the family problem, the difficult one, the one who needed to be managed. About parents who'd watched their daughter bleed on their porch and chosen their other daughter's convenience over their child's life. All the way back, I said. Document everything. The war was just beginning. I created the folder on my laptop 2 weeks after leaving the hospital. Just a simple manila folder icon on my desktop labeled Evidence. It felt like drawing a line in the sand. The first items were easy medical records from Cleveland General documenting my injuries, photographs the police had taken of my face and shoulder, the incident report filed by Officer Martinez who'd met me at the hospital, cold, clinical proof that someone had beaten the hell out of me on October 24th. But as I dug deeper, I realized this wasn't just about one night of violence. This was about 36 years of systematic manipulation, and I'd been too close to see the pattern. I started with my phone, scrolling back through months of text messages from Vanessa. What I'd dismissed as sisterly concern revealed itself as something more sinister when viewed in sequence. Mom's worried about you. She thinks you're isolating yourself too much. Dad mentioned you seemed distant at lunch. Everything okay?
We love you, but we're concerned about some of your recent decisions.
Each message carefully planted seeds of doubt about my mental state, my judgment, my stability, preparing the ground for what would eventually become the narrative of my breakdown. I printed every one. Then I moved to emails. Vanessa was meticulous about digital communication, always wanting everything in writing. What I'd thought was her being organized was actually her creating a paper trail to support whatever story she might need to tell later. Like the email from 3 months ago. Rachel, I understand you're stressed about work, but your comments at Mom's birthday dinner were inappropriate. Several family members mentioned they were concerned about your behavior. Maybe you should consider talking to someone professional about managing your emotions better. I stared at that message for 10 minutes, remembering the dinner in question. I'd suggested that maybe 75 wasn't too old for Mom to travel to Europe like she'd always wanted. Vanessa had shot it down immediately, saying it was unrealistic and irresponsible to encourage unrealistic dreams. When I'd disagreed, suggesting that maybe Mom could decide for herself what was realistic, Vanessa had gotten angry, but in her email version, I was the one who'd been inappropriate and concerning. I added it to the folder. The bank statements came next. I'd saved every transaction record from the past 5 years, and now I could see attempts at financial manipulation I'd been too trusting to recognize. Small things, mostly. Vanessa borrowing money that was never repaid, restaurant bills that somehow always ended up being my responsibility when we dined together, her convenient habit of forgetting her wallet whenever we went shopping. Nothing illegal, but a clear pattern of viewing me as a personal ATM. I was deep in the evidence collection when my phone rang, Mom's number flashing on the screen. For a moment, I considered not answering, but I needed to hear what they were going to say now that the dust had settled. "Hello, Mom." "Rachel?" Her voice was cold, distant. "We need to talk." "About what?" "About this circus you're creating, this attention-seeking behavior." I almost laughed. After 2 weeks of radio silence, this was her opening move, attention-seeking. Filing police reports, involving lawyers, making wild accusations about your family. I haven't involved any lawyers yet. Yet, her voice sharpened. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm exploring my options. Your options for what destroying your own family, making up stories about people who love you. Making up stories. I felt my voice rising. Mom, I have a medical report documenting 2 cracked ribs, a dislocated shoulder, and a concussion. Those aren't made up. You hurt yourself, Rachel. Vanessa told us what really happened. You were drunk, you were violent, and you fell. I fell? Yes, you attacked Ethan and fell during the struggle. The lie was so bold, so complete, that it took my breath away. They'd had 2 weeks to perfect their story, and this was what they'd come up with. You know that's not true. What I know, Mom said, her voice turning sharp, is that you've always been dramatic, always been prone to exaggeration when you don't get your way, and now you're taking it too far. Too far.
If you keep this up, if you keep spreading lies about Vanessa and Ethan, we'll have no choice but to cut contact completely."
There it was, the threat I'd been expecting, the final card in their deck.
"You'll cut contact with me if I tell the truth about what happened."
"Oh, we'll cut contact if you continue to embarrass this family with false accusations and attention-seeking behavior." I stared at my laptop screen, at the evidence folder with its growing collection of proof, at 36 years of my life reduced to a series of manipulations and lies.
"You know what, Mom?"
"What?
"You should have opened the door."
What are you talking about?"
"That night, when I was bleeding on your porch, begging for help, you should have opened the door."
Silence on the other end. "Because if you had," I continued, "if you'd acted like actual parents instead of co-conspirators, maybe we could have worked through this. Maybe I would have been willing to keep quiet about what really happened."
"Rachel."
"But you didn't. You chose them over me. You chose their lies over my blood. And now you're threatening to cut me off if I don't play along with their version of events."
"You're being unreasonable."
"I'm being honest. For the first time in my life. I'm being completely honest about this family and how it operates. If you pursue this ridiculous path..."
"You'll what disown me, stop speaking to me, pretend I don't exist."
I thought about the 2 weeks of silence, the complete absence of concern for my welfare, the way they'd rallied around Vanessa's lies without question.
"You've already done all of that."
"Mom, you did it the night you left me bleeding on your porch. So what exactly are you threatening me with? The loss of people who never actually cared about me in the first place."
"That's not..."
"It is exactly that, and you know what I'm done pretending otherwise." I could hear her breathing on the other end, probably calculating her next move. "Your father and I won't stand for this. Rachel, we won't let you destroy this family with your lies."
"Then I guess you'd better lawyer up too."
I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from relief, from the incredible lightness of finally saying what I'd been thinking for 36 years. I opened the evidence folder and created a new subfolder, threatening phone calls. Then I started typing up everything I could remember from the conversation, timestamps and all. When I was done, I leaned back in my chair and looked at my work. 2 weeks ago, I'd been the victim of a coordinated attack by my own family. They'd beaten me, abandoned me, and then systematically destroyed my reputation to cover their tracks. But they'd made a crucial error. They'd assumed I was too weak, too broken, too conditioned to their abuse to fight back. They'd assumed I would disappear quietly, taking their secrets with me. Mara knocked on my apartment door at 8:30 that evening, armed with Chinese takeout and her laptop. "How's the evidence collection going?" she asked, settling onto my couch.
"Good, really good."
I showed her the organized folders, the documented timeline, the growing collection of proof. "But I think it's time to move to the next phase." "Which is?" "Research. Deep research on Vanessa and Ethan, their finances, their business dealings, their history. People this good at manipulation and violence don't just start with family members." Mara grinned. "Now you're talking. I've been waiting for you to get angry enough to really fight." "I'm past angry," I said, opening my laptop. "I'm strategic." We spent the next 4 hours digging into public records, social media profiles, business filings, and court documents. What we found was illuminating. Ethan had been sued twice for fraud in the past 5 years. Both cases had been settled out of court with non-disclosure agreements. But the basic facts were public record. He had a pattern of pressuring clients into high-risk investments, then disappearing when the deals went south. Vanessa's social media history revealed a different woman than the grieving, concerned sister of her recent video. There were years of posts showing extravagant purchases, expensive vacations, and a lifestyle that didn't match Ethan's official income. And then there were the reviews, hidden in the depths of real estate websites and business rating platforms. We found a trail of complaints about Ethan's practices. Clients who felt misled, investors who'd lost money, business partners who described him as unethical and dangerous. "He's done this before," Mara said, reading over my shoulder. multiple times. The only difference is this time he went after family. Which means he's getting desperate. I realized. He needed that mortgage co-signature because his other schemes are falling apart. I created a new folder, Financial Crimes. By midnight, I had enough evidence to paint a very different picture of my assault. Not a random act of family violence, but a calculated attack by a man with a history of fraud who needed to silence the one person standing between him and financial ruin. "You know what this means, right?" Mara said as we finally called it a night. "What?" "You're not just going to beat them. You're going to destroy them." I looked at my laptop screen, at the evidence folder now bulging with proof of years of manipulation, fraud, and abuse. "Good," I said. The war was no longer just beginning. It was underway. And I was winning. The invitation came 3 weeks later, delivered with the kind of false warmth that had manipulated me for decades. "Family meeting," Vanessa's text read. "Sunday dinner at Mom and Dad's. 6 o'clock. Time to talk like adults and put this behind us." I stared at the message, recognizing the pattern immediately. They'd tried threats, isolation, and character assassination. Now they were moving to their final strategy, the illusion of reconciliation designed to make me back down. Mara read the text over my shoulder. "You're not seriously considering going?" "Actually, I am." "Rachel, they beat the hell out of you last time you were alone with them." "I won't be alone this time." I held up my phone. "Voice recording app. Everything they say will be documented." "That's not enough protection." "It's not about protection anymore. It's about getting them on record. They want to talk like adults perfect. Let's see what they say when they think they've won." Sunday arrived gray and cold, typical November weather that matched my mood. I sat in my car outside my parents' house at 5:55, watching the familiar scene through the dining room window. All of them gathered around the table, waiting for me like judges preparing to deliver a verdict. But this time, I was ready. I'd dressed carefully professional but not intimidating, wounded but not broken. The recording app was active before I even got out of the car. Everything they said would become evidence. Mom answered the door with her practiced smile, the one she used for church and neighbors. "Rachel, honey, you look better." "Better than what?" "Better than when I was bleeding on their porch." "Thanks, Mom." Dad stood to embrace me, his hug lasting exactly the same 3 seconds as always. "Good to see you, kiddo." Kiddo. Like I was 12 instead of 36. Like the past month of warfare had never happened. Vanessa and Ethan were already seated, their faces arranged in expressions of concerned love. Vanessa looked like she'd been crying, probably practicing in the mirror for hours. "Oh, Rachel," she said, rising to hug me. "I've missed you so much. I've been so worried." The performance was flawless. If I hadn't lived through the reality, I might have believed it myself. I took my usual seat, the one that put my back to the kitchen, facing the people who'd orchestrated my destruction. "So," Dad said, settling back into his chair, "let's clear the air." "I think that's a good idea," I said. "Let's talk about what really happened." Ethan leaned forward, his face earnest. "Rachel, I owe you an apology. I should have been more patient that night. I should have recognized that you were struggling." "Struggling, not beaten, struggling." "Struggling with what?" "With everything," Vanessa said softly. "Your loneliness, your drinking, your anger at seeing other people happy." There it was, the official narrative, delivered with surgical precision. "My drinking." "Rachel," Mom said gently, "we've all been worried about you for months. The way you've been isolating yourself, the mood swings, showing up to family events smelling like alcohol." "I don't have a drinking problem." "Denial is part of the disease," Dad said. "We understand that." I felt the familiar ground shifting beneath me, the way it always did when my family rewrote reality to suit their needs. But this time, I had an anchor, the recording app capturing every lie. "So your version is that I'm an alcoholic who attacked Ethan while drunk." "We prefer to say you were having a crisis," Vanessa said.
And yes, you became violent when we tried to help.
Help with what?
With getting you into treatment, Ethan said. We'd researched some excellent facilities, places that specialize in addiction and mental health issues.
Mental health issues? Depression, anger management, whatever's been making you so difficult lately, Mom said. Difficult. The word I'd been labeled with my entire life whenever I'd stood up for myself.
And if I don't agree to treatment,
the silence stretched between us like a wire about to snap.
Then we'll have to make some hard choices, Dad said finally.
What kind of choices?
About your place in this family, Vanessa said, tears starting to flow. About whether we can continue to enable your destructive behavior.
Rachel, Ethan said, his voice taking on that reasonable tone I'd learned to fear. We love you, but we can't stand by and watch you destroy yourself, and we can't let you destroy us. There it was, the threat, delivered with perfect emotional manipulation. Destroy you how? The lies you've been telling, the police reports, the way you've been trying to turn people against us. His voice was getting harder. It needs to stop.
What if I don't want it to stop?
Then you'll find yourself very alone, Mom said quietly. Cut off from the only family you have. And from opportunities, Ethan added. I have a lot of influence in this city. Rachel, a lot of connections in the financial sector. It would be unfortunate if your instability became common knowledge among potential employers. The mask was slipping now. The loving concern was giving way to naked threats.
Are you threatening my career?
I'm explaining consequences, he said. Actions have consequences. False accusations have consequences. What about assault? Do assaults have consequences? What assault? Vanessa's voice was sharp now. You fell, Rachel. You were drunk, and you fell.
I was sober. The hospital blood work says otherwise,
Ethan said smugly. I stared at him. What blood work? The blood work that showed alcohol in your system. The blood work that proves you were intoxicated when you hurt yourself. But I knew there was no blood work. I'd been conscious the entire time at the hospital, and nobody had drawn blood for alcohol testing. He was lying boldly, confidently lying because he thought I couldn't prove otherwise. You're right, I said quietly. Actions do have consequences. Something in my tone made them all look at me more carefully. What's that supposed to mean? Vanessa asked. I stood up slowly, looking around the table at the 4 people who'd spent my entire life making me feel small, wrong, and disposable. It means I'm done. Done with what Dad asked. Done pretending this is normal. Done accepting your version of reality. Done being the family scapegoat. Rachel, Mom started. Done being threatened, manipulated, and gaslit by people who are supposed to love me. You're being dramatic, Vanessa said. We're trying to help. You're trying to cover up the fact that your husband beat the hell out of me because I wouldn't co-sign your fraudulent mortgage. Ethan's face went white. Fraudulent. Variable rate loan with adjustment clauses that could push the interest above 12%. Balloon payments. Prepayment penalties. All designed to extract maximum fees before the inevitable default.
You don't know what you're talking about.
I know exactly what I'm talking about. Just like I know about your history of fraud lawsuits, your pattern of pressuring clients into high-risk investments, your desperate need for someone else's credit to prop up your failing schemes. The room was dead silent. You needed that co-signature because you're broke, I continued, because your other cons are falling apart, and this house is your last chance to stay afloat. That's not... And when I threatened to expose the loan terms, you decided to beat me into submission. When that didn't work, you launched a character assassination campaign to discredit me before I could tell the truth. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone, holding it up so they could all see the recording app.
Congratulations, you just confessed to all of it.
Ethan lunged across the table, but I was already moving toward the door. You can't use that, Vanessa screamed. That's illegal. Actually, it's not. Ohio is a one-party consent state. I can record any conversation I'm part of. I paused at the dining room entrance, looking back at my family one last time.
You threatened my career.
I said to Ethan. You threatened to cut me off. I said to my parents. You tried to destroy my reputation. I said to Vanessa. I held up my phone again. Hagapota! The Vietnamese phrase slipped out something I'd learned from a coworker, but the meaning was clear enough in English.
See you in court.
I walked out of that house for the last time, leaving behind 36 years of manipulation, abuse, and conditional love. In my car, I sat for a moment listening to the recording, their voices crystal clear as they threatened, lied, and revealed their true nature. Then I opened my contacts and scrolled to the number I'd been saving for this moment. Peterson and Associates, how can I help you? I'd like to schedule a consultation with Attorney Peterson. I have evidence of assault, fraud, defamation, and conspiracy.
What kind of case is this regarding?
I looked back at the house where my so-called family was probably panicking, realizing they'd just handed me everything I needed to destroy them. Family law, I said, but it's going to be criminal too. As I drove away, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 36 years, complete freedom.
The war wasn't just underway anymore.
It was time. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined, but it felt enormous as I walked through those double doors on a cold January morning. 6 months had passed since that final dinner. 6 months of legal preparation, evidence gathering, and watching my family's carefully constructed lies crumble under scrutiny. Attorney Peterson had been right when she'd said this would be complex. What started as a simple assault case had mushroomed into something much larger: criminal charges against Ethan for assault and battery, a civil suit for damages, and an investigation into his business practices that had already resulted in fraud charges. Vanessa sat in the front row with my parents, all of them dressed like they were attending a funeral. In a way, they were. The funeral of the Monroe family mythology, the death of 36 years of carefully maintained fiction. They'd tried everything to stop this moment. Ethan's lawyer had filed motions to suppress the recording, claiming it was illegally obtained. When that failed, they'd attempted to paint me as mentally unstable, bringing in a psychiatrist who'd never met me to testify about my supposed psychological issues. But Peterson had been thorough. She'd not only countered every argument, she'd turned their attacks into evidence of their coordinated conspiracy to silence me. The judge, a stern woman in her 50s named Richardson, called the court to order at 9:30. We're here today regarding the case of Monroe versus Monroe and Williams, she began. Multiple charges including assault, defamation, and conspiracy. Vanessa's lawyer spoke first, presenting their version of events with practiced smoothness. According to him, I was an unstable alcoholic who'd attacked my own family and was now seeking revenge through the legal system. He played excerpts from Vanessa's Facebook video, pointing to the genuine emotion in her voice as evidence of her sincerity.
Ladies and gentlemen,
he said, addressing the small audience of court observers, this is a family tragedy, a woman struggling with addiction and mental illness, lashing out at the very people trying to help her. It was a compelling performance. For a moment, I almost believed it myself. Then Peterson stood up. Your Honor, the defense would have you believe this is about addiction and mental illness, but the evidence tells a very different story. She began with the medical records, clearly documenting injuries consistent with assault, not self-inflicted trauma. She presented the timeline, showing how Vanessa's social media campaign had begun within hours of the attack, suggesting premeditation rather than spontaneous concern. But the real breakthrough came when she played the recording from that final dinner. Ethan's voice filled the courtroom. I have a lot of influence in this city. Rachel, a lot of connections in the financial sector. It would be unfortunate if your instability became common knowledge among potential employers. The threat was clear, undeniable. Even Vanessa's lawyer shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Peterson continued with the financial evidence, bank records showing Ethan's mounting debts, the predatory loan terms he'd tried to force me to sign, the history of fraud complaints against his business. "This wasn't a family intervention," she said. "This was a coordinated attack by desperate people trying to cover up financial crimes." When it came time for testimony, Ethan took the stand first. Under Peterson's questioning, his smooth charm cracked. He contradicted himself multiple times, claimed not to remember clear statements from the recording, and grew increasingly hostile as the evidence mounted against him. "You testified that Ms. Monroe attacked you," Peterson said, "but the medical evidence shows that her injuries were far more severe than yours. How do you explain that?" She fell," he stammered. "During the struggle. A fall that caused 2 broken ribs, a dislocated shoulder, and facial trauma. She was very drunk. There's no blood work showing alcohol in her system. Mr. Williams. In fact, you lied about that blood work existing, didn't you?" The silence stretched until Judge Richardson prompted him to answer. I may have been mistaken." Vanessa's testimony was even more damaging. She tried to maintain her caring sister persona, but Peterson methodically destroyed it with timestamps, social media posts, and recorded statements. "You posted a video about your sister's breakdown at 2:37 a.m., just hours after the assault," Peterson said. "That's remarkably fast for someone who was supposedly shocked and concerned." "I was upset. I wanted prayers for her." "Or you wanted to control the narrative before she could tell the truth." When my parents testified, claiming they hadn't heard me knocking that night, Peterson presented Mrs. Patterson's testimony about seeing them watch from their window as I bled on their porch. The final piece of evidence was my own testimony. I spoke calmly, factually, without drama or embellishment. I told the truth about the predatory loan, the assault, the abandonment, and the systematic campaign to destroy my credibility. "Why did you wait so long to come forward?" Vanessa's lawyer asked during cross-examination. "Because they're my family," I said simply, and I'd been trained my entire life to believe that family problems should be handled privately, even when those problems involved fraud and violence. The verdict came down at 4:15 in the afternoon. Guilty on all counts. Ethan received 2 years in prison for assault and battery, plus additional time for the fraud charges that had emerged during the investigation. Vanessa was sentenced to community service and ordered to pay damages for defamation. My parents faced no criminal charges, but the civil judgment would cost them their house. As we left the courthouse, Vanessa caught up to me on the steps. "I hope you're satisfied," she said, tears streaming down her face. "You've destroyed our family." I looked at my sister, the woman who'd orchestrated my beating, abandoned me when I needed help, and spent months trying to convince the world I was insane. "I didn't destroy anything," I said. "I just stopped pretending it was healthy." 6 months later, I was sitting in my new apartment across town, a space that felt more like home than anywhere I'd ever lived. The settlement money had allowed me to take time off work, to heal both physically and emotionally from 36 years of psychological warfare. Mara knocked on my door at 7:30, carrying wine and Chinese takeout. "How are you feeling?" she asked, settling onto my couch. "Free," I said, and meant it. For the first time in my life, completely free. "Any regrets?" I thought about the question seriously. Did I regret losing my family? Did I regret the public spectacle, the court case, the months of stress and uncertainty? "No," I said finally. "They made their choices. They chose money over family, lies over truth, convenience over love. I just chose to stop enabling it." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. For a moment, my heart rate spiked. Old habits die hard. But it wasn't a threat or manipulation. It was from one of Ethan's former clients, thanking me for coming forward and helping expose his fraud schemes. It turned out my case had opened the floodgates. Dozens of people had found the courage to speak up about their own experiences with him. "You did the right thing," Mara said, reading over my shoulder. "I did the only thing I could live with," I corrected. "I told the truth." Outside my window, Cleveland was settling into evening, lights coming on in apartments, families gathering for dinner, people living their ordinary, imperfect, but honest lives. I'd learned something important in that courtroom. Justice isn't always about winning. Sometimes it's just about refusing to let lies become the official truth. Sometimes it's about saying no to people who've never heard that word from you before. Sometimes it's about bleeding on a porch and deciding you deserve better than the people who won't open the door. The Monroe family civil war was over, and for the first time in 36 years, I was on the winning side. Thank you for listening to Rachel's story of survival and justice. I'd love to hear from you. Where are you listening to this tale of family betrayal and revenge? Are you at home, commuting, or perhaps reflecting on your own family dynamics? Please leave a comment below about where you're tuning in from. Subscribe to hear more stories like this, and share your thoughts about Rachel's journey from victim to victor. Your engagement helps bring these powerful stories of resilience to more people who might need to hear them,